The hidden vault beneath Varek Station. No one on Varek Station cared about the lower decks anymore. They were cold, dark, and full of old cables and forgotten machines. But Darren Holt was not like the others. He was a human engineer who liked fixing things others ignored. Darren had come to Varek Station just 6 months ago. He was quiet, smart, and kept to himself. Most aliens didn't pay attention to him until that day when everything changed. It started with a power drain. The system log showed energy loss from an old maintenance tunnel no one had checked in years. Darren went down alone, his toolkit on his back, his scanner in hand. The deeper he went, the stranger things felt. The lights flickered, the air grew still, and his footsteps echoed like whispers. Then he saw a metal wall that didn't match the rest of the station. It had no buttons, no control panel. Just a smooth, dark surface covered in glowing blue lines. The scanner beeped wildly, showing unknown materials and locked mechanisms inside. He touched it, and the wall pulsed softly. A small hand-shaped imprint lit up, perfectly matching his own hand size. With a deep breath, Darren placed his hand into the imprint. There was a hum, a low vibration in his bones. Then the wall split open silently, revealing a chamber hidden for who knows how long. Inside was no dust, no rust, just clean, untouched metal and soft blue light. And floating in the middle of the room was an object shaped like a teardrop, glowing faintly. It turned slowly. In the air, as if waiting for someone, Darren stepped closer. Drawn by something he could not explain, his fingers brushed the object, and a sharp light flashed through his eyes. The room disappeared for a moment, replaced by visions. He saw ancient cities, alien faces, a fire in the sky, and voices speaking a language he had never heard. When he blinked, he was back in the room, but something had changed inside him. Object floated gently down into his hands. It felt warm, alive even, like it recognized him. He slipped it into his bag, confused and shaken. Whatever this was, it had been waiting for someone like him. Darren didn't tell anyone, not yet. He returned to his bunk, trying to make sense of the experience. At night, the object pulsed softly from inside his locker, casting blue light through the cracks. It made no noise, but his dreams were filled with images of stars and alien eyes. The next day, something odd happened. As he worked on a coolant leak near the alien hangar bay, a Zalari pilot walked past him. She stopped, turned, and smiled at a human. Then she asked his name, her voice unusually soft. Darren was surprised. Zalari didn't usually talk to humans unless necessary. Later, a reptilian quartermaster who once barked orders at him offered him a fresh power cell. He called Darren Strong Hand in his language, which was a rare compliment. Even a tall insectoid medic stared at him in the corridor, tilting her head with curiosity. Darren began to feel uneasy. He wasn't wearing cologne. He hadn't done anything different. But suddenly, alien women of all kinds were noticing him. He returned to his room, opened the locker, and stared at the artifact. It blinked once, as if responding to his thoughts. Darren whispered, "What are you?" And for the first time, he heard something. A voice soft and clear inside his mind. "Chosen bearer detected," it said. "Integration begun." Darren backed away, heart pounding. He grabbed the artifact, trying to toss it aside, but it floated back into the air. It hovered before him and then slowly lowered into his palm again. His skin tingled, and he felt a rush of warmth through his chest. That night, he couldn't sleep. The voice returned, whispering things he couldn't understand. But one word kept repeating over and over: attraction. He didn't know what it meant, not fully. But the next day proved it wasn't a dream. A noble-born alien girl from the ambassador's family came to the engineering bay. She wore shimmering robes and moved like royalty. Without a word, she walked straight to Darren. Ignoring everyone else, she offered him a golden crystal, a sign of affection on her planet. Then she asked him to dinner in front of half the engineering crew. Darren stood frozen, unsure of what to say. All eyes were on him. And the artifact in his locker pulsed again in his mind. He realized something huge had just begun. He had unlocked something not just ancient, but powerful and dangerous. And now he was the center of attention for reasons he didn't understand yet. The artifact had chosen him, and every alien girl on the station was starting to feel its pull, whispers, gazes, and alien eyes. The station cafeteria was usually loud and messy. But today it was different. Everyone had gone quiet the moment Darren walked in. Alien girls from different species turned their heads to stare. Some smiled, some blushed, and some simply stared like they had seen a star come to life, Darren felt. Their eyes like heat on his skin. He wasn't used to this, not from humans, and definitely not from aliens. He grabbed his food tray quickly and found the farthest table in the corner. But before he could sit down, someone else joined him, uninvited. She was tall, blue-skinned, with glowing markings down her arms. Her species was called the Zivani, known for elegance and cold logic. Her name was Tyrell, an officer in the station's research division, and she had never spoken a word to Darren before. Now she sat across from him and smiled gently. "Do you feel it?" she asked softly, her eyes scanning him like a scanner. Darren blinked, confused. "Feel what?" She leaned in closer. The ripple, the attraction, the hum beneath skin. He didn't know how to answer. How could he tell her about the glowing artifact pulsing under his bed? How could he explain the strange dreams, or the voice in his head, every time he tried? The words vanished from his mouth. Tyrell touched his hand briefly, and a sharp pulse shot through Darren's spine. She shivered, smiled again, and left without another word. He stared at his tray, unable to eat. His fingers tingled where she had touched him like static fire. Later that day, he walked into the engine bay and found someone waiting. A girl with scales of soft silver and eyes like molten gold. Her name was Vexery, a mechanic from the Draskin race. She usually barked insults at Darren and made fun of human tools. But now she stood beside his workbench, holding a heat-wrapped lunchbox. "I made this for you," she said, looking away shyly. "I don't know why, I couldn't stop thinking about you." Darren took the box slowly, his hands trembling slightly. "Thanks," he said, unsure of what else to do as he opened it. The warm scent of spicy meat and herbs hit his nose. It was her people's comfort. Food, usually shared between bondmates. And Darren had never even been invited to lunch by her before. He felt dizzy, not from the scent, but from the sudden, overwhelming attention. That night, the artifact pulsed stronger than ever. It floated out of the locker on its own, spinning slowly in the air. Soft blue waves spread from it like soundless whispers. And Darren heard the voice again clearer. This time, connection forming, it said. Signal strong. Multiple targets responding. "Do not resist." He sat up, sweat on his face. "What are you doing to them?" he asked aloud. The artifact spun faster, and the air around it shimmered. "Not doing to," the voice said, calling out, "to those who are already looking." Suddenly, images flooded Darren's mind, faces of the alien girls he'd met recently. Their thoughts, their hearts, their quiet longing, and beneath it all, one truth repeated. They weren't being controlled. They were being drawn to something ancient inside him now. Something the artifact had awakened. The next morning, station command sent a summons. Darren was to report to the diplomatic wing immediately. As he walked there, he saw whispers follow him down every hall. Alien females paused their duties to glance at him, eyes full of curiosity and desire. When he reached the chamber, 3 high-ranking females were waiting, each from different worlds, each dressed in ceremonial garb. One of them was a military princess, another a scientist priestess, and the third a cultural ambassador. They stared at him with serious eyes, but they weren't angry. "Human," said the ambassador. "Do you know what you carry?" Darren stood frozen. "No." The scientist stepped forward, scanning him with a golden device. "It has chosen you," she said. "The relic of the Valari Pact." The room fell silent. Darren asked slowly, "What does it do?" They looked at one another, then back at him. It binds desire. The princess said, not just physical, but emotional, spiritual, biological. It makes you a signal. The priestess added, to those ready to bond, Darren felt. Like the floor had dropped under his feet. They told him the artifact was a relic of an ancient empire that once united dozens of species. It was meant to find a compatible soul and let that soul attract others for a sacred purpose. But what that purpose was, they didn't fully understand either. Now Darren was at the center of something he couldn't control. Something that made alien women look at him like a flame in the dark, and he wasn't sure if it was a blessing or a curse, because the more they were drawn to him, the more he began to feel something pulling at his own heart too. The Pact of Fire and Fragrance, asterisk. The ambassadorial hall had never smelled so strange. Darren stood stiff as incense burned in golden trays around the chamber. The scent was sweet at first, but it twisted in the air like invisible fire. It clung to his skin, his breath, his thoughts, and he could feel his heartbeat slowing. Don't breathe too deep, whispered the guard behind him. It's a mating incense. Darren's eyes widened, but before he could respond, the tall doors opened. 3 alien noblewomen entered in silence. Each wore the ceremonial robes of her species, and each held a sealed vial filled with colored smoke. The one in red, with spiraling horns and dark silver eyes, was Vara of the Drukery. The second, tall and graceful, covered in shimmering feathers, was Suralee of the Therian, and the third, with glowing tattoos on her skin and sharp emerald hair, was Cavail of the Zalari. They walked toward Darren as if he were a prize, not a person. The artifact in his jacket pulsed softly like a heartbeat beneath his clothes, and he suddenly understood they weren't here to talk. They were here to claim him. Cavail spoke first, her voice like a command wrapped in honey. The relic answers to you, and so must we, Suralee added. Each of us brings an offering of bond. Vara's eyes glowed as she said, and only one may be chosen. The guard stepped back, clearly nervous. Darren raised his hand slightly. Wait, I didn't ask for any of this. You were chosen, said Suralee. The relic has called, and we have answered. You must accept the pact, said Vara, or face the fury of those left wanting. Suddenly, the artifact floated from under Darren's shirt, spinning above his chest. It released a pulse that shook the room, and the air turned thick with heat and memory. The 3 alien women closed their eyes. Their breathing slowed, their bodies trembled. The artifact was testing them, calling to something deep inside each one. Then came the whisper again in Darren's mind. Desire is not enough, it said. The bond must be true. He backed away slowly, confused and overwhelmed. But before he could move farther, the chamber door slammed shut. A new voice spoke from the ceiling, a soft, smooth voice with no clear source. Welcome to the Pact of Fire and Fragrance, it said. Trial begins. Darren looked around in shock. The noblewomen stood still, eyes glowing now, their hands clutching their vials. Suddenly, their forms blurred, and illusions filled the chamber, each corner transforming into a piece of their world. To his left, Vara's realm appeared a place of lava and stone, where strength ruled and weakness was death. To his right, Suralee's world shimmered giant trees, glowing rivers, and skies filled with singing winds behind him. Cavail's domain twisted into metal towers, psychic storms, and endless questions. The artifact hovered above them all, cast in rays of shifting light. Choose not the most beautiful, the voice said. Choose the most true. You have until the incense fades. The 3 women approached Darren, each showing visions of what life with them would be like. Vara promised protection, pleasure, and power. Whole armies would bow if he chose her. Suralee offered peace, art, and gentle love. Her people would make him a living legend. Cavail whispered of knowledge, evolution, and the chance to reshape life itself with her by his side. Darren's head spun, not from pride, but from fear. He felt like a moth caught between stars, Everything they said felt real. But something in his gut didn't trust the ease of it all. He stepped back, his hands shaking. Then he heard a soft sound behind him, something that didn't belong to the three illusions. A voice, quiet and trembling, came from the shadows. "I don't belong here," it said. But I couldn't stay away. It was a fourth girl, not part of the trial, not dressed like royalty. She was an engineer like Darren. From the lower decks, her name was Lyra, and she held no vial, wore no perfume. Just grease on her fingers and worry in her eyes. "I don't have power," she said. "But when I saw what was happening to you, I had to come." She stepped between the illusions, blocking their glow. "I'm not here to win," she whispered. "I'm just here because I care." The artifact stopped spinning, the lights dimmed, and the illusions shattered like glass. The noblewomen faded back into themselves, confused, startled, silent. The voice returned one final time, speaking only one word, chosen. A golden light surrounded Darren and Lyra. The noblewomen bowed their heads and backed away without a word. The chamber doors opened again, but Darren didn't walk out the same man. Something had been sealed, awakened, and accepted inside him, and the artifact now glowed with quiet peace. Not desire, but destiny. He had passed the pact, not by choosing the strongest, or the most seductive, but by recognizing the one who never tried to take, but only to give. Asterisk, the Queen's daughter joins the hunt. Asterisk, the royal ship cut through the black void like a blade of light. Its wings shimmered with solar crystals, and its escort fighters flew in perfect formation. All of Verek Station trembled as the vessel approached. Even the guards stood straighter, and the command staff bowed when her name was spoken. Princess Cirella of the Vanari matriarchs, heir to a throne that ruled 7 star clusters, known for her beauty, feared for her psychic skill, and famous for never bowing to anyone, and now she had come for him. Darren stood in the docking bay. Not by choice, but by order. His fingers twitched nervously, and Lyra stood beside him, eyes narrowed. She didn't like this, not the ceremony, not the perfume in the air, not the way everyone looked at Darren now, the moment Princess Cirella stepped out of her ship. Time seemed to stop. She was tall, graceful, and radiant. Her dress shimmered like flowing glass, and her violet eyes scanned the crowd slowly, until they landed on Darren. She walked straight toward him, no hesitation, no smile, when she stood in front of him. The entire docking bay went silent. "I have come," she said softly, "to claim what the relic promised me." Darren blinked, confused. "I didn't promise anything," he said, trying to sound confident. "You didn't," she replied. "But it did." The artifact floated out from under his jacket again, on its own. It pulsed once, gently, as if greeting the princess. She smiled at it, then looked at Darren. "I dreamed of this moment before I was even born," she said, "and so did many others." Cirella turned and addressed the station, her voice carrying with psychic strength. "By the right of Velen Flame, I challenge all who surround him. I alone shall prove worthy." Gasps filled the bay, and one of the ambassadors stepped forward in protest. "You cannot invoke that law here, princess." But Cirella raised her hand, and the artifact pulsed a second time, silencing everyone. The challenge was sealed, and Darren was the prize. Later that day, Darren found himself in the observation garden, a place of peace. Now filled with tension, Lyra stood by his side, arms crossed, her eyes dark with worry. "This is crazy," she whispered. "Why is every powerful female in the galaxy suddenly after you?" "I don't know," Darren said honestly. "But it's not about me, it's about the artifact." Suddenly, the garden shimmered, and Cirella appeared, not walking, but stepping through folded space. "I mean no harm," she said calmly. "But I must understand you." She reached out, not with her hands, but her mind. Darren felt a pressure in his skull, a warmth behind his eyes. Visions flooded in his childhood on Earth. The way he loved to fix broken things. How he hated being looked at like a tool or a hero. Cirella pulled back sharply, her eyes wide. "You are different," she whispered. You feel more than they do. Darren took a step back. You came all this way to read my thoughts? I came, she said softly, because the artifact called me. But why? Darren asked, what is this thing really? Sorella walked toward the floating artifact, her voice dropping. My people believe it is not just a relic, but a test. To find the one who can balance the old alliances, the buried loves, the lost trust between species. She turned to face him again. My mother ruled with fear. My sisters fight over blood, but I want something else. I want someone who can feel truth through chaos. Lyra stepped between them suddenly, her hand gripping Darren's wrist. You can't just take him like some trophy. She snapped. Sorella tilted her head, examining her, then smiled. I see now, she said. You were the one chosen during the trial of fire. Lyra raised her chin. He chose me because I didn't play games. Sorella looked at Darren, then back to Lyra. That I offer no game, she said. Only truth. She touched the artifact gently, and a golden spark shot between all three of them. Visions returned, this time shared. Darren saw war, peace, love, betrayal, galaxies rising and falling, and in every vision, a human stood in the center, sometimes alone, sometimes hand in hand with an alien woman. When the spark faded, they all stood quietly. Sorella lowered her eyes. I will not force a bond, she said, but I will wait. Then she vanished once more into light. Lyra turned to Darren, her voice soft now. You're not just some engineer anymore. He nodded slowly. I don't think I ever was. And somewhere in the depths of Varick Station, the artifact pulsed again, not with desire, but with awakening, as if the real purpose had only just begun. The trial of 10 desires, asterisk. The transmission came at midnight, encrypted, unsigned, and pulsing with an ancient frequency only the artifact could decode. Darren watched as its surface lit up with 10 glowing symbols, each spinning in a circle like a puzzle waiting to be solved. Then the voice returned, not the soft one he'd heard before, but deeper, older. Awakening confirmed. It said, proceed to the temple of the spiral core. The artifact gave coordinates that didn't exist on any star map, yet somehow the royal database recognized the signal and unlocked a path. A forgotten moon surrounded by glowing rings, Erix 4. A dead world with a heartbeat beneath its dust. Princess Sorella arranged the ship. Lyra packed his gear, refusing to let him go alone, and together, with a small escort of scientists and silent guards, they traveled into the void. As their ship descended toward the moon's surface, Darren felt the artifact tremble in his hand. The temple rose from the stone like a buried dream. Half of it was sunken beneath the rock. The other half was carved into spiraling towers with strange angles that hurt the eyes. The entrance only opened when Darren placed his hand on the central column. The ground shifted, doors creaked, and air that had not moved in 1,000 years rushed out in a single breath. Inside, the walls pulsed with light and memory. Every step Darren took triggered a shimmer. A sound, a whisper of the past. The team moved carefully, but the artifact floated from his grip and led the way, until they reached a wide chamber with 10 circular platforms, each one glowing a different color. The voice echoed again. Trial of 10 desires initiated. One soul must step forward. Darren stepped onto the first platform without knowing why. A wave of warmth washed over him, and then the illusion began. He stood in a golden field under an alien sun. A beautiful woman approached, her eyes shining with pure affection. She offered him a home, children, peace, but only if he never left her world again. He hesitated, then stepped back, and the illusion shattered. The second trial began immediately. A vast throne room, full of power and admiration. Darren was crowned emperor of a multi-species alliance, but Lyra stood in chains, forgotten and silent. He turned from the throne, and the vision dissolved, one after another. The trials tested his soul, not just his mind, not just his heart. Each platform offered him a different kind of desire, pleasure, Fame, knowledge, revenge, safety, even immortality, and every time he chose truth, connection, or freedom, his body grew weak, but his will stayed strong. At the 8th trial, his heart faltered. He saw Earth, his family, his old life restored. If only he gave up the artifact. He almost said yes, almost believed it could be real. But the artifact pulsed with pain, and Lyra's face flashed before him, not in illusion, but in memory. He whispered, "Not like this," and stepped back. The 9th platform tested his love. Lyra appeared before him, dressed in white, smiling gently. She offered herself fully, but only if he surrendered his choices to her completely. He reached out, then stopped. "If it's not free," he whispered, "then it's not real." The illusion wept as it faded. Then came the 10th platform, dark, silent, and cold. No illusion, no vision, no voice, only himself. He waited for minutes, then hours, as time seemed to stop, and slowly, he realized this trial wasn't about resisting temptation. It was about embracing emptiness, to accept being wanted without becoming owned, to love without control, to carry power without using it selfishly. He dropped to his knees, closed his eyes, and breathed deeply. "I want to be real," he said softly, "even if no one sees me." The platform glowed bright white, and the chamber rumbled. The artifact flashed like a star, and all 10 platforms vanished into light. The voice returned, but softer now, and full of warmth. "You are seen," it said. "You are chosen." The temple shook as ancient machines activated. Walls folded open to reveal a chamber of light. Where Darren floated into the air, the artifact dissolved, not vanishing, but merging. Its glow entered his chest, embedding into his very being. When he landed, the others rushed in. Lyra caught him as he stumbled, and she whispered his name. Like a prayer, Sorella watched from the side, nodding slowly with respect. Darren looked at his hands, still human, still scarred. But now something deeper lived inside him. Not power over others, but connection to something far older than any throne. He had passed the trial of 10 desires, and now, the galaxy would change forever. Because Darren Holt was no longer just a human engineer. He was the living key to something the stars had been waiting for. The price of irresistibility. The moment they returned to Varek Station, Darren felt it. A tension in the air, sharp and quiet, like everyone was holding their breath. The lights were dimmer, the halls less crowded, but the silence wasn't. Peace. It was the kind that came before storms. Lyra held his hand tightly, her fingers trembling just slightly. The artifact was gone from view, but Darren could feel it in his chest, now warm. Alive, waiting. He wasn't sure if he was still just Darren Holt, or something much more. And the station was no longer just a workplace. It had become a stage. The summons arrived before he could even rest. A formal order. Report to High Chamber. Council immediate audience. He tried to laugh, but nothing about this felt like a joke. Even Sorella stayed silent as they entered the golden lift toward the upper tower. Inside the council chamber, all seats were filled. Ambassadors, fleet admirals, elder scholars, even a war priest from the Cravathi order. And in the center of it all stood a projection of Darren, slowly rotating in a glowing ring. "This," boomed a voice, "is the cause. This human has activated a relic lost to time. And now our daughters, our officers, our heirs are drawn to him like flame. This cannot be allowed without consequence." Darren stepped forward, clearing his throat. "I never asked for this," he said calmly. "I didn't choose the artifact, it chose me." "And yet," hissed a scaled elder, "your presence threatens the stability of 13 alliances. The pheromonal signatures from your body now trigger ancient codes in our genetics." Another counselor slammed the metal staff. "Do you deny using this to manipulate the emotions of our citizens?" "I don't even understand half of what's happening," Darren replied, his voice honest. "But I haven't harmed anyone." The lights flickered, and then a new figure entered the chamber, clad in ceremonial armor, with a long silver braid. Falling to her knees, Queen Althara, sovereign of the matriarch constellation and mother to Sorella. She didn't speak right away, only looked into Darren's eyes as if peeling away the skin of truth itself. You carry what our ancestors once died to protect, she said. You awaken what we buried: emotion, choice, chaos. And yet, you did not take, you gave. She turned to the council, raising the jeweled hand. There is one path, she said. Let him decide before the relic forces its own will. The chamber buzzed with confusion. Decide what? Darren asked. Carefully, the queen spoke without pause. You must choose a mate, one bond, sealed in tradition. If you refuse, the artifact will select, and its choice may tear this station apart. Darren's stomach dropped. Sorella looked at him. Without blinking, her posture strong but her eyes gentle, Lyra stood beside him, silent, but her heart pounded so loud he could feel it. Across the chamber, several noble daughters and respected officers waited, hope and tension on their faces. He turned to Lyra, his voice breaking. I never wanted to hurt anyone. She smiled sadly. Then don't choose for power. He stepped forward, the chamber holding its breath. I choose, he said. Not the strongest blood, nor the highest title. I choose the one who stood by me when I was just a repairman. I choose. Lyra. Gasps echoed through the chamber. Some scoffed, some whispered, some looked away in anger. But the artifact glowed inside him with radiant gold, filling the room with a warmth none could deny. Sorella lowered her eyes, then nodded once, graceful in loss. Queen Althera gave a small approving smile, and the rest of the council fell silent, unable to argue with what they felt in their own hearts. Suddenly, the chamber ceiling opened, revealing the stars above. The artifact's energy rose like mist, spreading across the station, calming emotions, softening anger, lifting confusion. Darren held Lyra's hand, and the light embraced them both. Not just a symbol of union, but of choice, honesty, and truth over desire. The price of being irresistible wasn't power, it was responsibility. And Darren had paid it in full, with a heart that never wanted to rule, only to belong. What the artifact was truly for. Asterisk, the stars above Verac Station pulsed with strange rhythm that night. Not in light, but in feeling. In the hearts of those watching from their windows. Something had changed, not just inside Darren Holt, but across the station itself. Some whispered of ancient destiny. Others feared what it meant, but no one could ignore it anymore. Darren sat on the edge of the outer viewing deck. No guards, no ceremony, just him and Lyra wrapped in the silence between stars. The artifact had stopped glowing, but its warmth still lived inside his chest. He felt it in every breath, every heartbeat, like a second soul growing beside his own. Do you feel it too? Lyra asked quietly. Darren nodded. It's like the galaxy is listening. She smiled faintly. Then maybe it's time to speak. That night, Darren followed the feeling back to the temple chamber within the station, a room untouched since the old days of Empire. Sealed under layers of code and dust, the doors opened for him without effort, responding not to command but to recognition, and inside waited someone or something he hadn't expected. A projection of light, shaped like a woman yet made of stars. She floated above the stone floor, eyes closed, voice calm as gravity itself. You have passed the final resonance, she said. The integration is complete. Who are you? Darren asked softly. I am the voice of the Valari construct, she replied. Born from 10,000 minds who feared extinction, and chose instead to encode hope. Darren stepped closer, heart pounding. All this, what was it for? The attention, the trials, the bond, she smiled. And the stars inside her shimmered. The artifact was never a weapon of desire, it was a filter, a searchlight across time, looking not for dominance, but for someone who could connect. Not conquer, Darren blinked, trying to understand. You mean it was testing for love? Not love alone, she said, but empathy, choice, and the will to be chosen. She raised her hand, and the room changed, walls turning into transparent memory. Images floated around them, worlds destroyed. By pride, species lost to greed, but also glimpses of peace. Moments where two hearts from different planets changed everything. You are the bridge, she said. And now, it is your turn to choose what the bridge connects. Suddenly, consoles came alive, glyphs glowing in every language known and forgotten. Darren felt them in his mind maps, equations, emotional threads between species. He wasn't meant to rule or be adored. He was meant to be trusted, to be the first of something new, something not controlled by thrones or armies. Lyra stepped into the room then, drawn by the same force. The Star Woman turned to her and smiled. You too are part of the design, she said, chosen not by glow or power but by presence, the strength to stay when others fled. Together, they touched the central crystal, and the construct pulsed one last time. Then it faded, leaving only silence and the sense that something had begun. Back on the station, things changed fast. Sorella returned to her people, not in anger, but with a message of peace and freedom. The council passed new laws honoring choice, rewriting the old rules of union and alliance. Species once cold to each other now shared labs, ships, even stories. And in the center of it all was Darren, not a king, not a prophet, just a human engineer who listened, who chose gently and was chosen in return. The artifact no longer floated beside him, because it had become him, a living symbol of possibility. Encoded in blood and soul, Lyra stood beside him through it all, not as an accessory, but as a mirror, proof that sometimes the galaxy doesn't need another hero. It needs someone who sees the one standing next to them and says, I choose you. So when the stars whispered again, when the next signal pulsed across the void, and a new relic awoke far beyond the rim, everyone knew who they would send. Not a warrior, not a ruler, not a legend. They would send the man who looked into the eyes of aliens and saw not fear, not conquest, but connection. Because that was what the artifact was truly for.